We did take it for granted in a Google first world where it's the front door to everyone's web browsing experience, right? It's just guaranteed. Search traffic's going to be there, but it's not really going to be the case for much longer, it seems like.
No, and that's why I think you'll see things like media driving people to sites. So you have to engage them where they are, and then you got to move them over. You got to be so good they can't ignore you, and they move over to where you are.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Generative Now. I am Michael Mignano. I'm a partner at Lightspeed. And for today's episode of the podcast, we're gonna be doing something a little bit different. Today for the show, we're out here in the eastern end of Long Island, right near where I grew up, and right near where one of my good friends and the guest on today's episode grew up, Semil Shah. As we move towards the back half of 2025, we're gonna be out here talking a little bit about what we've seen so far this year and what we can expect to end the year. So enjoy this special edition of Generative Now with my guest, Semil Shah. So glad we're doing a new experiment for the pod out here in nature, eastern end of Long Island. Thanks for doing it.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time across Long Island like you have growing up. We would just spend summers like going through the woods, getting on a boat, fishing, just kind of wasting time in an analog world. So it's really fun to always come back here. And then now that I'm really into cooking and have a lot of friends here in the summer, like you cannot beat the seafood and the produce here. It's just incredible. So for 2 or 3 months out of the year, it's like a magical place.
We gotta talk about the M&A frenzy.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
out of control. And the talent frenzy, right? It's not just M&A. It's actually probably not that much actual M&A at all, right? There are licensing deals, there are these sort of acquisitions, and there's
both.
talent.
I think it's both, and it's the crazy salary stuff is, I think, driven by one person.
Zuck.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the way I think about it is like these kind of NBA teams, right? They have about 12, 15 players. He's hired about 10 to 15 players.
Oh, more than that.
More. Well, I mean,
Like 40 or 50.
But that are getting these kind of NBA-sized contracts. I don't know.
It feels like at least tens of millions, or just based on all the reports I'm seeing on Twitter.
I think of it as like he's, the company's worth almost $2 trillion. He's trying to make this seminal bet.
Yeah.
He's like, this is a moment in time. He's been right more often than he's been wrong. And, he's sort of saying, okay, I'm going to go all in. I mean, even just poaching the Apple guy, even if it doesn't work out for him, he hurts another Mag 7 company.
Yeah. The company has obviously performed incredibly well.
Yeah.
Stock, I mean, if you just like zoom out and you take like a 10-year view on the stock price, it's just been insane. I do feel like there's been these obvious moments where it feels like Meta has to own the next platform, and they sort of place a bet on what that's going to be. And then they never really quite get it. Obviously, like the VR thing, maybe that will play out. It hasn't played out yet. Didn't they try to do a phone at some point? That didn't work out. Do you think they will be able to sort of claim victory in terms of super intelligence and being like the AI platform?
I don't think that's the right question. I think the right question is, do they have a shot, and do their chances improve in taking that shot by making these moves and investment?
Yeah.
And I do think they have a shot, and I do think the chances improve. And, he's just game theory. He's playing a very different game. Yeah. It's higher risk.
Yeah.
He's going to spend more money, but I mean, he's sort of got carte blanche as well.
I definitely think he has a shot, right? He obviously brought over Nat Freeman and Daniel Gross and all these amazing researchers, and like these guys are really, really good. I guess the question that people keep asking, and I keep saying on Twitter, is like, is this too much of a mercenary strategy? Are these guys really?
Well, go back to the NBA. This is the sort of what happened with the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they were a super team, superstars, and I don't think they even played together often because of injury.
Right.
But yeah, there was no sort of like bond with the team.
It's just about
I think the difference with Zuck is Zuck may say like, hey, we're in the office 5 days a week, and like I'm paying you guys a lot of money.
Or 7 days a week.
And we're all here and we're going to figure it out. And he may let some people go who don't row in the same direction too, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like he's paying all this money up front.
Right. You pointed out the market cap of the company. If you do the math, obviously these salaries and these comp packages sound absolutely insane, but relative to the overall value of the company, it's really not that much.
It's not that much.
It's really not that much, which is just crazy to think about. The other lens that I feel like people keep discussing with this is this the NBA? Is this MLB? Is this, Juan Soto?
Yeah.
Or is this iOS engineers. Remember when iOS came out, everyone's like, oh my God, we have to hire an iOS engineer and they don't exist anywhere. And we're willing to pay whatever it takes. Obviously the salaries are way different back then. And then everyone learned how to build iOS apps.
I think
supply was not nearly as valuable.
I think, not to degrade any old school iOS developers, I just don't think it's as multidisciplinary
Yeah, I agree
in some hardcore areas as this is, where you need to have like a grounding in math, machine learning.
You also have to have like crazy, what I've heard from these guys is like you have to have crazy intuition about how these things are going to work, because you have to invest all this time up front in the research and placing these bets, and you actually don't know what's going to come out the other end. We don't even really yet know how these systems work. So guys like Ilya Sutskever, famously has this great intuition. And maybe to your point, that's not something you can just learn overnight.
That's a great point. I didn't even consider, and you would know from working with these guys. So when you put it that way, and you put the proportion of the bet relative to the chip stack he has, and you look at like Apple's already in a tough position, he's taken some of their talent. Google could do this, but they're not, and they have a lot of internal talent. And then you have Amazon, which probably is just like, what do we do, right? Other than providing the infrastructure, but other players providing the infrastructure for this as well.
Yeah.
So it really, when you cast it that way, it makes it even a more interesting bet he's making, I think.
Yeah, the other company where I feel like there's a pretty interesting juxtaposition in the narrative right now is Apple. They just had a really strong earnings, but at the same time, every article, every tweet you read is, oh my God, Apple has totally screwed up their AI strategy. They're dead in the water. They're nowhere. They're going to lose. How are you making sense of that?
I feel like this is a topic we talk about like every 6 months.
Totally.
And I don't even know if I would change my previous stances on them, which is that they have not, they're not well suited for this world. And they've had multiple shots at doing it. And actually, this was a Curb episode where like Siri's so bad it's on Curb, and Larry David is, complaining about it. About Siri, right? And everyone gets it because they just try to put something in their calendar or put something in there, and it doesn't understand it.
But is it possible, Apple is famously the last mover on all these things. Is it possible we're still such in the early innings? And maybe Apple, I think Ben Thompson mentioned that perhaps Apple considers these large language models to be commodities over time, and they don't need to own the chat interface the way that ChatGPT does. They can just afford to wait until the technology is perfect and then just slot it in, right?
I do buy that in general, and I would never count them out, and they have a huge war chest. So I would never say it's not possible.
Yeah.
At the same time, I still don't have confidence in Tim Cook being the one to like be the integrator of that. Right. He's more of like a systems,
and he's like a supply chain guy,
and
has done a phenomenal job in that respect.
Done a great job, and I feel like I've said on the podcast that like he's probably someone I like.
Yeah.
So it's not a personal thing. It's just more like if I were on the board or like a major shareholder or activist at the company, I'd kind of say, hey, wait a minute, like Larry and Sergey are kind of like here. Zuck is real, right in it. Satya Nadella, I mean, couldn't be more in it. What's our guy doing? Yeah. What are we doing?
Do you expect them to make some giant splashy acquisition of one of these?
I think it'll be no, because I think it'll be a really big tell, because I don't think they've done something like that.
They never have. I think wasn't Beats the biggest acquisition?
Was one of the
largest. Mixed results.
Yeah. So they certainly could. I just still think then you have the whole integration problem. And remember, Siri was an acquisition.
Siri was doomed from the start, is what you're saying.
Of course.
Like when they acquired it, Apple didn't really know how to integrate it. And
they've had plenty of time. Yeah. And the other thing is that like, I think whatever they do, they should rebrand it.
Get rid of Siri.
Yeah. It's like once you're on Curb.
Yeah. Once Larry is like cursing you out, screaming at you.
That's like putting you in a coffin, basically.
Right. Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting. I mean, I feel like we just keep waiting and waiting and waiting for the card to turn there, and it just.
You're right though. They can wait till the very, very end. They're like the final boss in a way.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like you probably know from a lot of people, like how many people are doing searches inside ChatGPT? How many people are exporting to a Word doc or Google Doc? It's like just export to the format in here. and you can do the comments in here. Like it can take up so much real estate. And like, I know the Facebook story of the phone, they just like didn't have the internal gumption to do it.
Yeah.
But like, I totally believe maybe it's not OpenAI, but some company will create something.
That is the thing that would be the real nail in the coffin for Apple. And I feel like until that happens, all bets are off. I mean, the bottom line is we're all still using our iPhones, and it doesn't feel like that's going to change anytime soon. And Apple wins as long as that's the case. Doesn't matter who owns the model.
Yeah.
It really is going to take a new device. And that is not super easy to see. I don't think it's easy to imagine OpenAI or Meta or anyone having a new device that unseats the iPhone.
It may end up being that we have 2 devices.
I want to carry less devices.
I know.
I'm ready to throw my phone.
No, but I mean, I agree with you. And I think it's not like, will Apple go away or fade? I think it's just more, where does the value accrue?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. But as long as the phone's there, value's still going to accrue to Apple.
Mm-hmm.
These things cost $1,200 or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So speaking of Apple, the performance of Apple, these big M&A frenzies from Meta, we got to talk about a newly fresh publicly traded company, and that is Figma.
Yeah.
Obviously, incredible story, incredible IPO. You were a very fortunate early investor in Figma.
Yeah.
How are you feeling after the big day?
I mean, it just feels like great to be a small part of something like that, and it kind of turned into a meme stock, in a few hours. So
because it doubled, quadrupled?
I don't know, triple or quadrupled the day of, and it kind of was a meme stock to begin with because like Dylan, is young and in the mix of a lot of new technologies, and like he's into crypto and into AI before this stuff was bigger.
Yeah.
And so he's, I think he's only 31, 32 years old, something like that. So he's got like what, 75 or $80 million in Bitcoin and treasury, right? There are people that make like off-color jokes about Figma in like a positive sense online. So it kind of has all these ingredients to be like a meme stock,
On the other hand, I mean, it's an
with strong fundamentals.
Yeah, I was going to say incredible product, incredible business. Everyone uses it. I don't know if it was Dylan that said it in the S1 but design has proven to be this enduring differentiator. Yeah. I think back to, Scott Belsky tweets from like 10 years ago about how design is going to be the thing that sets, the good companies and the good products apart from the bad ones. And not only did that come true, but it's endured. And I think the Figma IPO is like a perfect representation of that.
For me, me and Dylan was more of a personal thing because he lived in my neighborhood. His first boss when he was an intern, when he moved here, the people he reported to were friends of mine, and they were like, you got to meet this kid.
In Marin?
No, in Palo Alto.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
They were like, you got to meet this kid. So we just became friends, and he was very kind to let me in the round. But it was more of like a bet on Dylan at the time. Since then, I think the interesting question we've made at Haystack, and also like made investments on both sides of the ledger, is there are some people when you wake up and you think, okay, like designers rule, and they shouldn't be burdened by the engineers and product people putting their sort of wishes into production.
Yeah.
That's a bottleneck. And actually the value should accrue to the designer. But you stick around the valley long enough and you meet other companies to say, well, I'll take the other side of the bet. Actually, the engineer and the build of everything is really critical, especially when you go cross-platform, especially in an AI world that you can't anticipate. And actually, they should be empowered with design tools, no-code design tools, and vibe code design tools. Yes.
Yeah.
So we've actually made investments on both sides of that argument.
I mean, it feels like both are happening right now.
And I think
we just talked about AI researchers being the NBA player.
And I think actually the market is so big that there's no right answer to these questions. So you got to play both sides.
It supports both.
Yeah.
It support both.
Yeah.
I feel like there's this semi-famous story of your investment in Figma. You wrote this blog post. I forget what year that was. What year?
2015.
2015.
Yeah.
Then on the day of the IPO, I think you had ChatGPT summarize everything you ever wrote about Figma or something.
Yeah, well, I had like a lot of friends. It was very nice, like text me, congratulations, like, oh my God. Because, there's been a lot of people I've known for over 10 years plus before I even started Haystack. And so it's very nice to get those messages. And they're like, you should write something. And I'd written something when the Adobe acquisition was going to fail because I kind of knew.
Oh, I think I remember that.
Yeah. And it was sort of like, hey, what's the lesson from this? Because everything to me is a lesson when things don't work out. And on this one, I was like, I didn't feel the energy to to go write another thing. I've written about the investment. I've written about this. I've written about this. It's going to sound
Like, how many times am I going to write about?
It's going to sound kind of like, it didn't make sense. And so I was like, Hunter S. Thompson, super brash. So I fed the GPT like a couple of my blog posts.
Yeah.
And then I said, okay, here's what's happened in the IPO, because it's really surprised people.
Yeah.
Right. Like no one saw that coming, and put it in the style of Hunter S. Thompson.
Yeah.
And
it's awesome.
That was great.
It's awesome. But go back to the original post, the 2015. Give us this story.
Basically, everyone knew Dylan was smart. That was not a question. He had this idea of like building something. He would always say famously, put Adobe in the browser, make it for free. So that was something he wanted to do. Then he kind of went into hiding. And then I kind of heard like, oh, he may be raising capital.
But he had already raised?
No, I had no idea. But I was like, there's no way I'm going to let this kid go.
You're doing like the classic VC thing where on some of these deals, you just have to like kind of hound the person.
But
and chase.
I probably have done that less than 5 times
in
my career. But I just knew Dylan was like off the charts.
Yeah.
So anyway, a year or so passes, and John Lilly, who is someone I know really well and incredibly nice person, and he should get credit for this, because I think he really was into design, and he had worked at Mozilla and really into WebGL and like new web technology. So, he did that deal. Greylock led that deal. John sat on the board. No, that was the A, and Dylan called me for the A.
Okay.
Invited me in. Only Danny Reimer and Bryce did the seed.
Well, what about the seed?
So the seed was Index, OATV in there. I mean, it was basically locked down. The unofficial story, you'd have to ask Danny or Dylan, is I think that Danny didn't let him leave the office.
Oh, man.
But Dylan wrote back to a few friends, including me, and said, I was really sorry that thing moved really fast and I didn't want to cause a stir. And now I'm just doing this round. Do you want to invest? So I was like, yeah, absolutely.
That was the A. He called you and got it.
Yeah. And then the next round, took a long time to bake. It was sitting there for a while. I want to say it was like 3 or 4 years after.
Yeah.
And Mamoon at just joined Connor Perkins, and he did it. And
he started to work by then, or?
He said, I mean, you'd have to ask him, but from what I've heard is that there was like little bits of small end data that he was seeing. And then obviously Dylan is a known quantity, and he just said, has he been working on it this long? Like, let's take a shot. There was a little bit of data. And then the next round, what ended up happening is Benchmark did Sketch. Okay. There was Adobe in the public markets. And then there was a company called Abstract that was doing a more enterprise collaboration mode. And Figma was still sort of more dispersed and freemium and bottoms up. And so that round was competitive and done at 400 posts by Sequoia. And then I think people were a little bit like, well, why was that competitive and why was it so much? And then the next round, from there, it just took off.
Just went crazy.
It just went crazy.
Yeah. There were all these products, right? There was Abstract, there was Envision, which was blowing up. Sketch was the original, but I think people really underestimated how important the collaboration would be. I remember with Sketch in the early days of Anchor, this is not that long ago, we were sending files. It's like, oh, if you want the design, here's the Sketch file. Oh, wait, that file's out of date. Here's another one. It seems archaic.
I think you nailed it. If you look at some of these startups, not all, they have this like almost singular design decision, not to be, no pun intended, that they made in designing the software, the workflow, that you're like, you look back on, you go, yeah, that was a killer call, But I totally agree. Yeah, really, really cool. So Figma IPO, obviously, I think exceeded people's expectations. True surprise.
We talked about M&A, talent frenzies. Is this kind of the opening of the liquidity window that everyone in venture and startups have been talking about over the past 5 years and waiting for? Is that the way to interpret this moment?
I don't think so, because I think Figma was a true N of one IPO prospect. If you just look at the fundamentals and the metrics, I don't think a lot of companies have those. And then all the M&A, I do think that's a separate market where people feel a little bit looser now to go try those things. And
because no Lena
the chill. Yeah, I think part of Lena Khan's strategy, which, by the way, I say this is like she's very effective at what she was doing, was to be a deterrent, was to put a chill on things. Yeah. And the chill seems to be now like, hey, Meta, you want to do this deal. And there's some people talking about, the SEC is looking at it and everything. But like in a horse race between the SEC and Zuck, like I'm going to put my money on Zuck.
What do you make of the Lena Khan tweet where she almost kind of took credit, not credit, but her strategy claimed some credit?
I loved her tweet.
Yeah.
I thought it was awesome. I think that she can do whatever she wants.
Sure.
And that, on that day, she was proven, in some degree, not entirely, but she was proven right.
So you kind of, you think that validated her a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because she's not a dummy. She knows that a lot of people here have been publicly asking for her to be removed, years ago. They were happy and cheering when she left. And she did her job in a certain way, and she was a kind of a pariah.
Yeah.
But I don't think she's like an evil person.
No, of course.
But at the same time, if I were her, I would write the same tweet.
Yeah. The counterpoint that everyone made, which I think is fair, is that the chilling effect of what she was doing.
Yeah.
Probably killed a bunch of, sort of failure mode acqui-hires.
Yes.
Which are actually very, very important to the technology.
It doesn't excuse a lot of the deterrents.
Yeah. So you think that this is not the turning point of the liquidity window? Figma was N of one. I mean, we talked about Zuck. What about Zuck and the acquisitions? We're hearing about companies like OpenAI do acquisitions. You think that's just...
I think there needs to be more of like a parade. There needs to be like the stripe, the fill in the blank, where we've been waiting for a while.
Got it.
Yeah.
You can't just have these one-offs.
No.
And moment in time.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Well, then, and I think in general, I'd love to know, how are you feeling about the state of VC? I mean, is this an exciting time to be investing, or
I
still
sort of swim only in the seed world, and it's a challenging time because the amount of money, the size of the rounds happening, it's sort of putting a lot of stress on the traditional, what you would call micro seed or small seed model.
Yeah.
So it impacts ownership. So if you have a portfolio construction based on an ownership model, it's really under test.
Yeah.
Then it's like, okay, well, if you focus on really high quality, your entry prices could be all over the place.
Yeah.
So then you have to be right more, in order to move the needle. So I think it's a really, really challenging time. I tell a lot of our limited partners and, friends of mine in the industry I work with, I've been doing this 13 years, just focus on the stage.
Yeah.
I felt the most whiplash, the most sort of disorientation, most market distortion in the last year or so.
This is a big topic. I feel like we're going to need to be caffeinated for it. Should we hit the ditch witch and go get a cold brew?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. We got to talk about seed. This is, I feel like seed is becoming the round that everyone in venture is discussing right now. It feels like it's changing, and it feels like the changes are having an impact on every other round, and therefore pretty much all of startups.
Yeah.
And obviously Haystack being legendary seed fund, you being legendary seed investor, you're the guy to talk to. So what's going on? Maybe set the stage for us a little bit.
Yeah, and I love your feedback too, because obviously a lot of people ask me this question because I've been doing this stage for over 10 years and really focused on it. And, I'll start off by saying this is one man's opinion. And I love comments from people who are watching and different points of view, and your point of view, obviously. But I would say historically, the larger firms move in and out of seed on an 18 to 24 month cadence. They kind of reset. It's very common to see them kind of coming back in and saying, okay, we need to reset. Go back to seed.
It's cyclical, you're saying.
It's almost like a 24 month kind of rhythm, more or less. I think the difference now post-COVID, and that's what we should dig into, is that the past doesn't necessarily inform the future. And this is what I wrestle with, which is the prizes have gotten bigger, and therefore the rounds have gotten bigger, and therefore the venture capital firms have gotten bigger, and therefore, spending an extra $1 or $2 on a seed round becomes a cost of doing business.
Yeah.
And what that does in a seed model, when you're really constructing the model in the pre-COVID world of trying to have one or two things that really pop that can drive a huge return on a small fund. Those rounds now are fewer and far between when they're, 1 on 7 posts or 2 on 14 posts. They're harder to find because there's so much capital in the market. So this was the Tom Tungu's post I sent you. That was like a more data-driven post. Rob Go from NextView had a great post of just how the current AI wave and the costs associated with it are crushing the seed model. And I think the debate ends up being three sort of views you can take. Is venture just now all native AI and anything else you do has a cap to the limit? Should you have a blended portfolio as a seed manager for the most part when you're playing seed, because you don't know what's going to happen? You don't know what the next Dylan Figma is going to be. And, that thing took years to mature. Or do you just basically say, look, you have to stick with the model. The model has worked. The model has a sort of mathematical basis to it.
What is the model? Give us like the 30-second.
I think because it's higher risk, you want more ownership. Okay. Typically, you could get more ownership relative to your fund size when the entry prices were lower.
Yep.
It could be 7 posts, 14 posts. Now, when you start at 30 posts, 40 posts, 50 posts at seed, you have to hit a bigger outcome to drive a return in your fund.
Right.
So a famous example I always use is Firebase.
Yep.
So James and those guys started Firebase, super amazing guys. They're in YC, raised maybe less than $2 million. Then they raised a Series A from Albert at USV. And then within 18 months, they were acquired by Google for almost $500 million. Great return for everybody, especially in terms of the timeline. Today, obviously, that doesn't move the needle for a large fund. That seed, they would have raised 4 or 5 in YC, not 1 to 2. And the Series A round, had they gotten there, would have been at least double, right? So the question would be, would that have been $1 billion acquisition right now? I don't really know.
Yeah.
And so that's really the debate on the field. And no one really knows because people see a lot of activity right now in AI and they see a lot of private marks. But if you think about Figma, we go back to our conversation back at the Lighthouse, that took for most people over 12 years to realize. And what happened in the 12 years? Trump, COVID, Ukraine war, interest rate regime over, Trump back again.
Right.
A lot happens.
So it sounds like your options are either you stick with the model, like you said, or what do? You get bigger. You move. You go from being a seed fund to being a seed plus A fund.
Well, it's a catch-22.
Right.
So a lot of people decide to go bigger, and they'll say, they'll tell their LPs, hey, LPs, you want us to get ownership, 10% minimum in the seed rounds. What used to cost 1.5, 2 now costs maybe 3, 3.5, 4. And to get the number of shots on goal, because the risk is the same, right? It's going to cost more money. So then your hurdle goes up, your GP commit goes up, everything goes up.
Right.
Yeah. You're playing at a bigger poker table.
Right. It's a totally different game.
Then when you start trying to do 7 million, 8 million seed check rounds and stuff, guess who's looking around the corner? Sequoia, Excel, and these funds are not dumb. Like they know how to move in and out of seed very well.
It seems like if you're an early stage founder, there are more and more ways to get less and less dilutive capital than ever before.
Yeah.
You can raise from a traditional seed fund like Haystack. You can go to YC, you can go to HF0, you can go to pick your accelerator, SPC. And like I said, it's not that dilutive. And so you have options if you're a founder, right? Now, that means that the seed funds like Haystack, but also the bigger funds that you just mentioned and folks like Lightspeed, oftentimes if you want to go and compete with those funds, you're not getting the classic 25% ownership. And so if a large fund, again, like the ones you mentioned, comes in at the seed, gets that lower ownership, they're going to be hungry for more ownership in the next round. And so they're going to do the A the moment they can, which means they're boxing everyone else out, which then motivates the bigger funds to want to be in seed even more so they don't miss the opportunity. So it almost feels like, if I can sum it up, you're moving away from a world in which you do the seed round, somebody else does the A round, somebody else does the B. And it's like, we got to go as early as possible. And then every round, take every chance we can to buy up ownership.
Yeah, I mean, that's the real estate plot argument I use, which is like, let's say the next Zoom of this era or, a Cursor, right?
Yeah, Cursor.
In Cursor, typically you have 2 to 3 shots at the apple for like a venture style return. And the larger funds, I think, scaled up over the last few years because they were basically saying, hey, look, there's going to be more and more of these things. And we can't get it on the first or second shot of every apple. Zoom and Sequoia being a kind of poster example. So then they say, okay, I'll get a couple of shots at the apple. And it doesn't matter if I got in a cursor at 40 million posts, 100 million posts, or 400 million posts. It doesn't matter. Did I get in or not? I have 3 strikes.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I think is happening. Now, the other side of the debate is that I still believe you'll have small funds with relatively smaller, sub-billion-dollar outcomes that move the needle for those investors in those funds and those managers.
Okay.
I still think that will happen.
Explain that.
I think there still could be a Firebase. You could have a $40 million fund, invest $1 million in the next Firebase. It gets turned around, in 2 years to Google, 480, go home.
How do you think this dynamic, so we're talking so much about the game on the field for VCs, how these dynamics are affecting VC strategy. How do you think this impacts the founders and the incentives of the founders?
It impacts the founders a lot of ways. So the number one way is I think there are 2 core issues that the founders face. One is learning to over-optimize how and when to raise capital and from whom, to the point where you're not really building a fan base. And so, is the cheapest item in the store the right item in the store to get for the job to do? So that's one. And I think the second thing is the invitation of signal risk. There's always a debate about signal risk, but I think if you go into a big fund too early, then some founders who are more savvy will split the seed amongst 2 firms and sort of create that auction format and between the 2. But it ultimately is up to the founders to perform where they get past the signal risk. So I think those 2 are the key issues. And then derivative issues for founders, I think is raising too much money ahead of knowing what to do with it, because I do think that dampens creativity and dampens internal angst and momentum.
Yeah.
And then the other issue is I don't know how you recruit in this market with Zuckerberg, doing these kind of deals and other people paying through the nose for these people. So really the money is cheaper today, and finding the right aggregation of talent is much more difficult.
If you're an early stage founder that comes from maybe the more traditional startup world of raise a little bit of money, prove something, raise a little bit more at a slightly valuation, prove something else, and you go through sort of the steps one by one. I mean, can that still work, or do you have to be in the hyper aggressive, every raise is a mega raise, light money on fire to grow as quickly as possible?
I think it just depends on where you are. So to me, these are company design questions. How do you want to design your company? And how you finance your company is part of the company design. So we just were the second sort of in command in an investment. There was a lead investor we know. The founder, we thought, was going to raise $6 to $8 million because of his profile and background. He only wanted 2. And he was like, I already have a team ready to go. I know what they're going to make, and I want to hold their feet to the fire.
Yeah.
And I had coffee with him in New York a couple of days ago. And I said, hey, I expected the round to be totally different. And he said, no, I want to have something really in hand so I can go out. And so what does that mean? One is that there's still people out there like that who want to design their company this way. 2, I think it can work, but you need somebody who's moving very fast, and you need a natural fundraiser because that person has to break through the noise and say, hey, I got to work with this person. I mean, think about the deals you've done that are earlier Series A's. You've basically started with in your message, I want to work with this person.
Yeah.
That is not many people meet that bar. So when we're looking at seed, it's not just price. We really have to assess, can somebody meet that bar?
Right. Yeah. So a higher bar.
Yeah. We even go deeper and say okay, if we're in conversation with this person, no props, no decks, no models, we're just talking to them. Can we envision them hanging with one of our Series A friends for 2 hours unstructured, but coherent?
Yeah.
And most people don't pass that test.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because I feel like with all the different sources of capital and the rush to get in seed because you're going to get boxed out, it almost feels like the gravitational force would lower the bar.
Well, again, I've been doing this 13 years, and I believe that the first raises are not so much based on metrics or these things. They're based on, what is it like to work with this person? How fast is this person moving? How does this person compare to all the people you meet?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I tell entrepreneurs. They're like, what do I need for a Series A? And I always say it's a Steve Martin quote, which is, be so good they can't ignore you.
Yeah. What advice would you give to a founder that is getting just constant inbound from late stage funds right now because of that?
I'll tell you the same thing I've said for 10 years, which is record all the inbound, the date, the name of the person, who in the spreadsheet, and consult your investors and advisors on who to talk to and when. And, we've seen plenty of entrepreneurs get sucked into a lot of meetings, and these people are good at sucking you into meetings. So,
but it doesn't necessarily mean anything, right?
Doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. So switching it up a little bit, there's a topic I've been following quite closely. I think you have as well. And that is this, I almost want to say this battle that's unfolding between sort of AI agent companies like Perplexity and CDNs like Cloudflare. Cloudflare has gone out to the market. Instead of just being a CDN, they're saying to the world, hey, actually now we want to help you sort of monitor your traffic. And, we want to make sure it's not being scraped by bots. We want to make sure you're not losing traffic. So we're going to automatically turn on tools that make it harder for those agents to get your content. We're going to just do it by default. We're not even going to sort of ask your permission in some cases. Some cases we will, some cases we won't. And the benefit is that now you're not losing traffic that you would normally get by a human. You're not losing it to an agent. The flip side of it is users want these agents. Customers want these agents. Customers want to use Perplexity. They want to use ChatGPT. And maybe just the way the content gets browsed and consumed on the internet is changing. And sort of free markets and sort of the free behaviors of the actors on the internet just needs to play out.
Yeah.
I'm having a really hard time wrapping my head around this one because it's so nuanced and it's all new.
So the question is, at the scale of these technology companies that they have and the power that these agents could do, what's the equivalent of just having a bot run there?
Yeah.
The part about Cloudflare is interesting because this goes back to Bryce Roberts' old post called Defaults Matter. So I think that was interesting when Matt was talking about, the Cloudflare CEO, where he was like, hey, we just turned it on as a default setting. You can go in and turn it off.
Yeah.
Now, how many people can go into their CDN and turn it off?
Yeah, it's going to be a low percentage.
Right. And so it'll be interesting to see, because I guess they're like 15% of internet traffic, right? What the other CDNs do. And I don't know what the model is. I mean, obviously the model that people can envision, which is like, oh, the model provider will pay some kind of royalty back to the content source. But even if that happens, it's going to be way lower than what they would have gotten otherwise through subscriptions and other things.
It seems like this is going to be a new battle between the publisher layer and the agent layer, with the CDN in the middle playing referee.
And the CDN, in this case, Cloudflare, has inserted itself in the middle.
Right. They want to be the gatekeeper.
With a commercial interest.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the model, if you think about it, the model that web publishers are used to is they put their content out there. They rely on organic or inorganic sources of traffic to get human traffic, and then they monetize that human traffic via ads or subscriptions. What the agents are doing is they're sort of grabbing that content and putting it on their sites, and they're crediting it, and they're providing a link that people can click through to. But what the data that Cloudflare and companies like Tollbit are showing is that the click-through rate is extremely low. And these AI agents in many cases are actually really significantly damaging the traffic. And so you could kind of see the other side of this. I know a lot of people are sort of upset with Cloudflare right now, but you can also kind of see the other side of this.
Oh, absolutely.
We're going to try to protect your business model.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's an interesting battle. I think, look, the Cloudflare team is amazing. I mean, they've been way ahead of the game in a lot of ways. So it's not a surprise that they're inserting themselves here.
Yeah.
And there's no rules, The way I think about it, though, is that there's a lot of bad content on the internet. And there's like the downside of letting everyone read, write, publish is that you get a lot of noise. And so, maybe the economics of just doing stuff on the web is changing. Whatever happened to newspapers now may happen to content creators who don't modernize with the times.
Right.
So then you have little things like, well, there's, AI search optimization, right? Can you do that? I mean, we'll see if that field comes along, but all these companies now control that access point, and it's not really clear what they're going to do. And they seem to be moving more towards subscriptions and not doing ads.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah. So I wonder if the ultimate outcome of this is, one way or another, ads are in trouble. Although, actually, sorry, let me take that back, because it seems inevitable to me that these AI agents are going to have ads.
Oh,
ChatGPT is going to have ads.
oh,
Perplexity's
100%.
gonna have ads.
100%. At the scale, I mean, it would be silly not to.
Yeah. It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, the backlash against Cloudflare has been strong. Do you think there's any chance Cloudflare just backs out of this strategy and says, oh, never mind?
Normally, I would say it is possible, but Matthew strikes me as someone who, I don't know him.
Me neither.
He doesn't do things willy-nilly.
Seems headstrong.
Yes.
Determined.
And, been at this for a really long time.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if the other CDNs
Yes.
jump into the game
Yes.
and create this sort of united front, the Akamais, the Fastleys, et cetera. I know a number of them have partnered with a little bit.
I think at a base foundation level, if you wanted to start your travel blog or your surfing blog here at Ditch Plains, the internet enables you to write and do everything you want and create videos and have a subscription service, but you're not entitled to that in perpetuity.
Yeah. So the distribution.
No. And MG, our buddy MG Siegler, he would cite Gruber's blog, or Ben Thompson cites MG's blog, and they'll put the quote in there and they'll provide a link.
Yeah.
But you can write on top of other content. You can remix content.
That is a good point. This is remixing on steroids.
This is remixing on steroids. And so if you take your travel blog or your surf blog and you go back into an in real life format, you have a storefront, right? Now, no one's taking the opportunity away for you to have your storefront downtown. The problem is with the foot traffic, and no one's guiding you don't control the foot traffic.
You don't control the foot traffic. And we did take it for granted in a Google first world where it's the front door to everyone's web browsing experience, right? It's just guaranteed. Search traffic's going to be there, but it's not really going to be the case for much longer, it seems like.
No, and that's why I think you'll see things like media driving people to sites. I mean, how many people are on Instagram that are creators that are saying, I'm hosting a meetup, click on my link. Yeah. So you have to engage them where they are. That's going to be in a Perplexity, in an Instagram feed, in a WhatsApp channel.
Yep.
And then you got to move them over to you got to be so good they can't ignore you, and they move over to where you are.
So we got to meet our friend for lunch soon. So why don't we get rolling over towards Duryea's and we'll pick up the conversation
Let's
there.
do it.
All right. So we're obviously here on Long Island. We talked about it earlier. And it feels like podcasts are getting more experimental. It feels like media is changing. And this is always a topic I like to discuss with you because in addition to being a great seed investor, you're a fan of media. You're a content creator. You've been blogging on the internet for, I don't know, decades at this point. What do you observe is happening to podcasts right now? Again, we talked about TBPN Live. We talked about Bryce. There's interesting things coming out of Colossus and Invest Like the Best. It's changing.
Yeah. I think this is a topic we should always check in on because it may be changing every 6 months.
Yeah.
Right now, like you pointed out, the pace of acceleration of change is very noticeable because things are working.
Yeah.
So I think a couple things come to mind. As one, probably a few episodes ago, we just talked about YouTube killing podcasts, right? Which essentially means videos eating podcasts, which means that's the point of creation for most people. And then that's splintering into live format, right? Live audience format and taped live and then broadcast. And then there's an archive. And then there's like richer production. Like, I mean, I'd love to hear where you're going to take this podcast or, what you've observed in Bryce doing his or other people doing that where they're saying, okay, maybe I want to do fewer of these things and do it longer form in more interesting locations and formats because we're kind of out of the era of seeing everyone on their headphones and in their home office, in front of or in their home bedroom or whatever. It's a little bit too static.
I totally agree. And I think it actually relates to something we talked about earlier. Going back to the Figma conversation, the premise for Figma was that design is an enduring differentiator, especially in a sea of mediocre applications. The things that are beautiful and that people love to use stand out. I kind of think that's what's happening to podcasts right now. The things that are beautiful and people want to watch, they want to put their eyes on, they want to immerse their sense of it.
But remember, tens of millions of people, every time a Joe Rogan or Lex Fridman pod come out, have it on their big screen TV.
Oh, totally.
Making pizza, hanging out with their friends, reading a book or doing a crossword. And there's nothing going on except two people talking.
Totally.
Now, everyone's not Joe or Lex. And so the question is, how do you create a richer content experience
100%
for that next person? And I think all the things we're talking about, whether it's Kill Tony format or all the way to what other investors are doing, or, my friend Jack Altman has been doing this kind of style pod, but in his office. And, people are experimenting with all these new things, and there's tons of space open for it.
Yeah, my point is, unless you're Joe Rogan or Lex, you can't really stand out with that format. You just can't catch up to their distribution.
Unless
you gotta
your
do something
guests
different.
are amazing, right? So Jack has an ability to get guests in the tech world, or unless your angle of attack is unique. So you may have really good people on, but you're an expert in a certain thing, like a Tim Ferriss, right?
Yep.
And then you sort of go. But yeah, I think people want to see people in different places. You think about why the All In podcast is so great. One of my colleagues just mentioned people in her generation, they want to watch, like Friends had a resurgence. They want to see people who are friends hanging out and working, and that's sort of one version of it.
Yeah. I also think we're going to start to see other formats and modalities creep into podcasts and videos. As an example, we mentioned Colossus and Invest Like the Best. Mm-hmm. So Patrick, he's been doing these great long form interviews forever. And now I'm pretty sure there's like a zine component. There's almost like a magazine component where he'll do a long form interview with Neil Mehta or Ramtin from Abstract. And then there's a written long form interview, and it's got beautiful photography. And I think there's actually like a physical copy of this thing. I think that's a pretty interesting strategy.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about even just selling that for $10, someone who's an investor or wants to be a VC or coming into VC can read about from Neil Mehta or read about the Josh Kushner interview in like a more luxurious format, even if it's $10. As a physical item, whatever he would sell it for, is great, because you would normally buy those books at the bookstore. They just don't exist at the bookstore.
Yeah. It reminds me of kind of like music fandom and pop culture. The first thing I thought of with the zine, with the Colossus thing, is it actually, speaking of Montauk, reminds me of Whalebone. Whalebone is like this surf brand which has merch, but they also make this magazine. And like, I actually don't even know what people do with the magazine. It's just nice to look at. It's just like beautiful photography.
Well, Airbnb tried to do a magazine.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Which I thought was actually a really great idea, and I guess didn't have the
what
right
was in the
team
magazine?
I think it was like a travel and inspiration magazine.
It's a cool idea.
Like super, for a company like that, it's not a huge line item. But yeah, I mean, I think famous Andreessen line, right? We're just a media company that happens to invest in startups.
Yeah.
And so a lot of this thing is about media. A lot about it is about attention. And we're just talking about tech and VC, but this is much broader. I mean, I know we follow a lot of musicians online who are maybe like truly indie musicians are never going to make it. And then, I follow a lot of cooks online, and try to just watch what they're doing, and like just the innovation in the individual cooking blogger way they create videos or cut videos is, it just blows me away. And I'm sure that's true in like 50 other niche verticals.
Right. So they're just getting more artistic and creative with the video, or what are they doing?
I mean, I'm going to sound like a complete noob saying this, but like there are multiple editing tools that these folks can use online and pay whatever $4 a month for.
Yeah.
And they can remix content, make it more interesting, more catchy, right? Because you can look at how to make the perfect grilled cheese with bacon, out there. But if you get someone who's like really catchy format, those people aggregate a lot of audience members.
Yeah. It's just, I guess, again, something artistic, something creative, beautiful is another way to stand out. Actually, you know what it reminds me of? The Instagram video you sent me 2 days ago about the Mets telecast on SNY, the New York Mets. Whoever is, directing that segment is doing really, really interesting things with the camera work and the transitions. It looks like classic films. And I certainly noticed it as a Mets fan, but I didn't really realize what was happening. It's a very, very intentional choice by this guy. I don't have his name. I should have brought it with me.
Yeah. I think that analogy can stretch out to a number of different places. Like, I think what that reminds me of when you were saying it, were like, when we were probably growing up and there was just terrestrial TV, you would have like QVC and online shopping networks on TV shopping networks.
Yeah.
And you would call and order whatever set of glasses. Now, when you see like the live e-commerce stuff, especially coming from Asia, they've got, it looks like a horse race board,
right.
all the stats and everything on it. So the overlay on top of video or live video, is just happening with captions and all this stuff we take for granted now.
And that stuff's baked into Whatnot, I think, right?
Yeah, so you can do all sorts of things. And this guy who's doing the Mets broadcast is like more film inspired. Imagine someone who's anime inspired.
Yeah.
Imagine someone who's, fill in the blank inspired. You can take it in a lot of different directions.
And AI is obviously going to make all this stuff easier and easier, right?
Easier and easier.
You tap a button and get the Fellini
really,
transition.
Really, the way it should go from like a content perspective is like you should get your raw feed that you pay for, and you can upgrade for other kinds of feeds, right? And it could just be a very small upgrade. You pay the one person who's creating the thing. I mean, it would be massive for them.
Yeah. Not to make everything about tech and startups. We talked about actually how it impacts VC a little bit with, invest like the best and things like that. But does this find its way into startup building in some way?
I don't think so. I think like for folks that have consumer facing or like small business facing ones, media is important at the right time.
Yeah.
But if Airbnb couldn't launch a travel magazine when it had oodles of cash, I think it's one of those traps, one of those startup traps. I think what's more interesting is like the cooking blogger I may follow or the interesting percussionist you may follow on Instagram. What can they do if they get a little bit of an audience now in terms of creating multimedia, like a zine you mentioned or something? Like I'm sure you followed a new artist you met on Spotify and you go to their merch store and they sell a record, and you may not be on a record player, but you buy the record as art.
Yep.
Right. So a lot of things are coming back, and wouldn't be surprised.
I do think it probably has an impact, maybe somewhat to your point, on startup brands and the importance of a great brand. We were talking a lot about how a lot of other companies want to partner with this company to be able to put that company's brand next to their brand, and they want to be associated with this company, and that's why they want to partner with it.
One of the first VCs I ever met in Palo Alto, who's still doing it, been doing it probably 30 years, said association is very important in our business.
Yeah, in all aspects of it, not just the startups, but obviously the VCs who you choose to raise money from, your hires. We're seeing this with Zuck and Meta. Obviously, they want to have the big splashy hires, not just in talent, but also in name.
These are just the tech VC versions of collabs.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Super interesting. Speaking of things coming back, I have actually noticed that like these vintage band t-shirts and merch.
Oh yeah.
They're so expensive. There's a vintage store actually in New York right near the Lightspeed office, and I walked in there and I went to go grab this 9 Inch Nails shirt, and I put it on the counter, and the clerk said, "Oh, it's $3.50," and I said $3.50. It's it's like a 30-year-old shirt. It's falling apart. He's like, "No, $350." Yeah. So it is crazy the premium that people will put on great iconic brand and artistry and imagery. I wonder what that will mean about the longevity of some of these shows and podcasts we're talking about.
I had this feeling that like the best shows, or even think of like Mad Men or Breaking Bad, within year 3 to 5, you're sort of pushing the edge of what's possible. And I found that same cadence to be true in like group chats I'm in, which are kind of like their own podcast series or TV series. Right? Yeah. And those kind of last about 3 to 5 years.
Yes.
And so I think the rate of decay in a space like this, where it's so easy and there's so many people and the tools,
it's going to be fast.
It's going to be way faster than that.
Yeah.
Because to match a production and writing, really Mad Men was like a visual plus, sort of text-based story.
Yeah.
You're not going to have someone randomly AI do that.
No.
Yet. But I think for a lot of other things, or podcasts, or what people are trying to do, not to call anybody out, I just think the next person there is going to be there, try it, copy it, go one step beyond.
Yeah.
Right? There's really no rules.
Remix culture on steroids. Absolutely. With AI. Are there any brands in AI right now that you think are doing a really good job? And we should revisit this question in a few months, because per your decay point, I'd be curious to know if you're still impressed by the brands a few months from now.
Well, I don't think anything I'm going to say is unusual, but I think like the leaders in their categories have done a great job. So like I think Perplexity has done a great job internally in our insular world of tech and VC and startups, have basically grabbed the mantle even before it was given to them
Yeah.
and said, we're going to do this, which is sort of
OpenAI, et cetera.
bold prediction to just own the browser interface. And I think externally involved enough investors, involved enough people, did enough press in their own sort of writing that like they sort of claim that headspace.
Yeah.
For people who are looking to bounce from Google search, they provided a home. So I think they did a great job. I think Cursor has done an amazing job just in the branding of the name and like what it means to be able to like write from there. And, you know, that's really a unique story.
That's
so
a good call.
They've done a great job at branding. I think OpenAI, even though it's very clunky branding, it's like, you know, you have the same number of models you can choose from as you have like a iPhone models.
4.0 and yeah.
But I think that their word of mouth amongst a wider variety of people, it just speaks to how powerful the AI prompting is.
Not the brand, the technology.
Which then conversely makes the makes the brand more interesting, right?
Yeah.
The product is driving it. Those are the ones that really stand out to me that have like owned the consumer mindshare space of like create with Cursor, search in a new way with Perplexity. You know, those are the things that are driving it right now. And I think to a smaller degree, you have like a Midjourney, right? And you have like a Suno, I know company you're involved with, but I don't think it's broken
Crossed over to mainstream. Yeah. Well, Semil, this has been awesome. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you.
Great to do an experiment and take the pod out into the wild. Maybe we'll do it again, and always looking forward to the next one.
First of many.
For those watching or listening, thank you so much for tuning in for this special edition of the podcast. We hope to do it again soon. See you then.